You know, one thing that separates us from all other animals? Stories. We tell stories, we dream about stories. Our whole lives revolve around story. Stories have the power to shape societies, to build nations, to inspire human greatness or great evil. As one of my favourite fictional characters say, all things begin and end as stories. The storytelling animal by Jonathan Gottschall highlights the importance of story and also theorizes it into why it's so interwoven into human nature and society. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you what I learned from this fascinating book. There is so much good stuff in this book, so much good stuff that in this video alone I'm not going to be able to cover it all. So I really recommend, if you are interested in this, go pick yourself up a copy. It's not that expensive, secondhand copies are easy to get because it really is worth a read. But I also do recommend you stick around and watch this video. So let's jump into it. What's really important to acknowledge here is how big of a part story plays into our lives and how it's woven into human nature. Every time we recount a memory, every TV show we watch or book we read or game we play, history, science, religion, politics, it's all story. It's all centered around narrative, the human narrative. And what's really interesting to start us off is that Gottschall points out how this is such an underrated part of who we are and actually under-acknowledged how important story is to being human. And we also, because of this, underestimate then how much of an impact story has, and things like fiction, story that isn't true, plays a part in our lives. You know, fiction, again, is everywhere in our lives. Made up stories. There are some that we're aware of, like books and TV and films. These are narratives that, whether we realize it or not, are having a huge impact on us, and they impact the way we see the world around us. But the reality is, right, fiction isn't just found in those areas. Fiction can be found in politics, in the news, in education, and even history. And again, it's important that we become aware of this and aware of the impact fiction can have on us. The next thing this book does, right, is it points out some theories to why is story such a key part of our lives. The first theory at the start of this book is he points out that one reason that story can be such a huge part of our lives is simply that we're addicted to it. It could quite simply be a drug, something that within our human existence we've become addicted to escaping the boring and harsh reality of life. You know, as a theory, it sounds pretty sound. We all love a bit of escapism in all its different forms. Life is brutal, it makes sense, the book is read, we understand story, right? But that isn't the end. The book doesn't just stop after like page 2. And although this may possibly be part of the picture, it certainly isn't the whole picture. Another more maybe scientific, deeper theory is that actually our obsession with story, the reason we're so involved in story, is that story acts as a training ground for our emotional experiences. This theory says that the reason we've spent millennia and millennia sharing legendary and mythical stories or simply recounting our experience at the shopping mall is because we need a low stakes, low risk environment where we can practice what it's like to have emotional experiences and human encounters. Now, let me just explain this a little more. Fiction, even in children, right, is always full of pain, of damage, of loss, and most importantly, drama. And modern fiction and drama is no different. So like when we watch a TV show, for example, right, and a character is going through something emotional and painful, there's these neurons in our brains, and like the unscientific term for them are called literally mirror neurons. And what they do is they allow us to feel empathy. We feel that person's emotion that they're going through. You know, it's the same thing when we're in a room with someone who's in a great mood and it's infectious, or maybe it's actually the opposite. They're in a really bad mood and it spreads amongst the team. That's the mirror neurons working. We copy the emotion, not just of real people, but of fictional characters too. And the result of this, the proposed purpose of this, is that when we experience these emotions through fiction, through these circumstances, it means we're more prepared for the real experience in our lives, that when we go through something similar, our brain, our body, our emotions have physically processed something similar. And hopefully, a bit more prepared for it. And there's also, on a side note, this really similar, interesting concept about dreams. And, you know, it's not definite, but there's this concept that dreams are the same thing, that it's a low stakes, safe environment to practice emotional experiences and reactions to circumstances. Dreams always have a narrative, they always have drama and full of emotion, and maybe it's just our brain practicing, ready for the real thing. Now, this book isn't just full of theories to why story's so important, but it has some really good, challenging concepts in it too. And I'm not saying challenging in terms of like they're intellectually challenging, hard to understand. This book is really, really accessible, but actually they're challenging and they challenge the way you look at the world, and also challenge the world and the things you thought you knew. So Gottschall talks about how there's this part of the brain, right, which literally is made for storytelling. That's its job, that's what it does, and it can't cope when there isn't a story to be told. So when there are times in our life, right, where our brain struggles to make sense of something or find meaning in it, often this storytelling part of the brain goes, oh, I can help you here, and it starts making a narrative to fill that void. The problem here is, though, stories aren't always true, and often the narrative this part of the brain weaves is going to be fiction. And so here's an example, right? Let's say you've got in from a long day of work, you're tired, you're restless, you're excited to see your partner. You walk into the house and you don't really hear anything. You walk into the living room and quickly they react, closing a laptop quickly and turning and getting up to give you a hug. Now, your brain might suddenly start asking the question, why were they silent when I entered the house? Why did they quickly close and push away the laptop when I came into the room? What have they been up to? And this is where you can't find meaning, you can't make sense of it, and the storytelling part of your brain starts to go to work. They're cheating on me. They're messaging someone they shouldn't have been messaging. They're hiding some expenses from me. They're lying to me. You know, it could be anything. But that's how that part of the brain works, and the narratives it weaves. And the problem is, right, with that situation is your partner is probably just on the laptop, distracted by YouTube or something, and then when you came into the room, they were just excited to see you, and so they quickly shoved it out the way and came and gave you a hug. But the storytelling part of the brain likes to go too far, it likes to make up stories, and that can be problematic. Gottschall also makes a really important point that actually it's not just for little things like this that the storytelling part of our brain goes to work. It can do it in much bigger areas. You know, two key areas he highlights are religion and conspiracy theories, places where sometimes maybe we can't find meaning or we see pain in the world and we don't understand it, and so the brain goes to work. And the second challenge I want to mention here is all around memory. For a while now, research has shown that our memories, they're fallible, that they cannot and should not be 100% trusted. This may be hard to hear if you've never heard this before. Your memory cannot be 100% trusted. My memory cannot be 100% trusted. But you want to know the real punch, the real kick in the gut? You know that thing from the previous challenge about how we have a part of our brain which likes to weave narratives and make story? It does that with our memory too. Here's a quote straight from the book. Put differently, the past, like the future, does not really exist. They are both fantasies created in our minds. The future is a probabilistic simulation we run in our heads in order to help shape the world we want to live in. The past, unlike the future, has actually happened. But the past, as represented in our minds, is a mental simulation too. Our memories are not structures of what's happened, and many of the details, small and large, are unreliable. Challenging, isn't it? Now, I want to make clear what he isn't saying here is that our memory is a complete lie, that we can't trust anything from it. But he is saying we should have a healthy skepticism and cynicism and just a healthy attitude when it comes to looking at memory. And I think particularly, the challenge here shouldn't be to go around scrutinizing other people's memories, but actually applying it to yourself. Come those situations where you're arguing, no, I said this, but I said this, whatever it is, that situation, I think that this is a challenge to have a healthy sort of bit of scrutiny towards your own memory. But the key word being here, healthy. And so there you go. That is The Storytelling Animal. I flipping love this book. I think it was really interesting. It's full of great information. Is this all like 100% like truth? Probably not, but there's some really great theories, some really great ways to understand story and make sense of why are we the storytelling animal. At the end of the day, this can give you a really firm foundation in understanding this subject area and something to build on with more reading and research. If you have learned something new or you have enjoyed this video, please consider dropping a like below, subscribing to my channel, and maybe sharing this video with a friend or family member you think would enjoy it or learn something new. I've been Ash Porter. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.